We finally got it, and it was glorious in the most WTF kind of way, like in a bad
It was
kind of
pretty
way.
cool.
Everyone press F to pay respects for Rhaenys. A lot of people asking about this in previous videos too. This episode is meant to show you that Targaryens can be burned. Pretty much all of them can be burned. Daenerys is the only exception to that because magic was in play, according to George R. R. Martin. Surprisingly, there are no new scenes in the intro woven into the tapestry. I think because they're saving for next week, in the aftermath of Rook's Rest, they'll show the events of Rook's Rest in next week's intro.
Well, that was the whole thing
opening
about like
scene starts
testing to
with
see if
Daemon
the
having
brother
another
could be
vision
burned
at
or not.
Harrenhal. We get a lot of. This time he's entering the Iron Throne Room and he sees young Rhaenyra, but in old Rhaenyra's clothing with Viserys' crown on her head. When she's saying he created her and then is set on destroying her, this is his conscience speaking to him. He's reckoning with the way he's treated Rhaenyra, his role in all this, all of his actions these years, his guilt over the succession, his jealousy. Notice he beheads her right after this with Dark Sister, the same way he did with Corlys Velaryon's brother in the Iron Throne Room during Season 1. Fulfilling her statement, he does kind of mean her. And the head continues to speak, saying this is what he always wanted. So he's sort of reckoning with that. And he talks to Alice Rivers about what's going on here, why he's having the visions. So I'll explain that in a second. Because a big part of that is tied up in the magic of the Children of the Forest and the fact that Harrenhal is built on the bones of an old weirwood forest that was cut down. But as you can see, the weirwoods have started to grow back up. The roots are growing back through Harrenhal now, slowly reclaiming the forest from Harrenhal. Daemon has literally been sleeping in a bed made from a cut-down weirwood tree, so of course he's going to have really spooky visions. Rhaenys then meets with Alan Hull at the shipyards here on Driftmark. She already knew that he was Corlys's bastard, but she'd never seen him before in person. There are a couple awkward conversations she has with Corlys about this later. Like, she knows exactly what's going on here. That's why she grabs his face and says his mother must have been very beautiful, beautiful enough to make Corlys forget his marriage vows to Rhaenys. Fun fact too, he got married to Rhaenys when Rhaenys was only 16 years old.
Kind of old.
He says it in so many words, but Corlys also knows that that's his bastard. Like, you didn't tell me he was the one that saved your life, of all people. And when she says that he should be treated with the respect that he's due as a bastard of Corlys, they're trying to lay the seeds for Corlys selecting him as the next heir of Driftmark. He could do that by legitimizing Alan here. Remember, his brother Adam is also one of the Dragon Riders too, so he's also important, but for a completely different part of the story. Alicent skips the Green Council meeting because of the side effects from the moon tea is affecting her gut. Larys Strong also clocks that, but he probably knew what was going on with her and Kristen Cole the whole time. Notice how he was lurking on them in the background of the courtyard in last week's episode too. So I think Larys Strong is just messing with her here. Like, he knows everything that's going on. Notice how he also says you should embrace.
That was funny.
Starts talking about pleasure, embracing. That's meant to be a nod to all the weird foot stuff he's been making her do all these years as he moves slowly towards the couch where she sat when they were doing all the weird foot stuff. She essentially tells him in so many words that she doesn't really care about Kristen Cole anymore. Like, he seems like he's trying to suss out the way she actually feels about him. They have a longer talk about how she feels like everything has gone to crap. It's only going to get worse. There's nothing left that they can do to stop it. And also, he notices that she's been reading the Targaryen histories. It's all because Rhaenyra said the prophecy of Aegon the Conqueror. She's been trying to learn up on the last long night, the White Walkers, all that stuff. And when he starts talking about the succession and what Viserys' true intentions were, I think the idea is that Larys Strong knows the truth of what Viserys actually said, that he was talking about Aegon the Conqueror and not Aegon II. Either because he knew way back when it originally happened, because he knows everything that happens in the Red Keep, he's the master of whispers, or he knew what Rhaenyra told her inside the Sept. It just seems like at some point
he was dressed as that woman back there.
But here's the thing. He would still support the Greens overthrowing Rhaenyra or usurping Rhaenyra. So even if he did know the truth back when they originally crowned Aegon II, I don't think that he would have tried to stop it. Like, he would have just continued to try and help them. Remember, he killed his entire family, so he'd have no problem helping the Greens usurp Rhaenyra. Daemon then starts having more visions, hearing things, boots marching, shouting. That's probably to the army foretelling what's going to be happening the next couple of episodes. Then he sees a person turning around and it's Aemon with his one eye, but it's Daemon's face underneath the eye patch. That's probably meant to foreshadow his eventual battle with Aemon at the God's Eye near Harrenhal, but that probably won't happen until like season 4. So essentially, Daemon is seeing his own future. It's also meant to be connected to what Alice Rivers said to him in last week's episode, saying that he was going to die in this place. Then he enters one of the kitchens and sees Alice Rivers preparing a potion for him to help him sleep. Notice all the frog sounds during their conversation. I think that's meant to be a sly reference to Maggie the frog and the prophecy that she gave to Cersei about her own death. Basically, this entire conversation is Alice Rivers just messing with Daemon. She explains a little bit of her backstory. She said that she inherited the duties of the previous maester at Harrenhal after the last one fled in the night, probably because they were also getting visions like Daemon is and just completely freaked them out. In the context of the books, they also say that Alice Rivers was a wet nurse working at Harrenhal as well. When she says that sleep can be thin at Harrenhal, it's very clear that she knows exactly what's happening to Daemon, and it happens to everybody there, as she starts talking about the lore and the history behind the castle itself. It's a real big info dump. It's really cool if you're into a lot of book lore like that. So when she's saying sleep can be thin in Harrenhal, that's a reference to it being a special place that's strong in magic just in general, like one of the special places around the world that are just particularly stronger in magic than others. Melisandre has a similar conversation with Jon Snow when she and him are passing underneath the wall, and she talks about the magic
to finish Game of Thrones
to make the
just
wall.
Watch this, because this is a prequel to Game of Thrones, and it's only on season 2. So it's a lot less commitment. And I think it jumps into interesting action faster. Game of Thrones takes a while to set up.
Like very, very powerful magic. She calls it one of the hinges of the world. Harrenhal is also a place like that because of the circumstances surrounding Harrenhal, building Harrenhal itself. She explains part of it, like she says that he cut down a weirwood forest to build the castle, which is kind of like building your castle on a cursed burial ground, like Pet Cemetery style. Like, where is the worst, most cursed place you could possibly build a castle? Why don't we cut down this really magical forest and put it on top of that? There's also the idea that there is blood in
I think that's how all series should do stuff. That's really smart of the HBO to do that, to start with a latest season and then work backwards. Because then every new show you release, nobody has to catch up. New fans can jump right into it.
Mortar of Harrenhal itself.
How you do it.
Harrenhal used a bunch of slave labor in the Riverlands to actually build the castle. It took 40 years to do, and he mixed a lot of the blood of those workers into the mortar that was used to actually build the castle. So there is literally blood in the castle walls. But like I said, this is also one of the reasons why the weirwood roots are growing through the castle, because the weirwood forest is slowly reclaiming the area from the castle itself. And that's what she means when she says the curse started when the first stone was laid, the curse of Harrenhal. The whispers she speaks of, because of the heart trees, the weirwoods that are still hurt, are the children of the forest. Remember, this is also right next to the God's Eye, one of the most magical places in all of Westeros, which was critical during the Children of the Forest's first war with the First Men. So it'd also be like building your castle near the center of all magic in Westeros. Also not a great idea to make a bed and have someone sleep in it that's made from weirwood trees. Like, do you want to have crazy visions? Great, yes, sleep in that weirwood bed. When she says she's a barn owl, cursed to live in human form, that's a warging reference, but I don't think that she's meant to be an actual warg in the context of the story. Daemon calls her a witch. The books do call her the Witch of Harrenhal. I think the idea is that she probably just worships the old god, and she's kind of like Maggie the Frog, in that she understands a lot of the history and the lore and all this stuff that's happening here. She gives him a sleeping potion, and the way they transition to the next day, I love the way they do this transition. They make it seem like it knocked him out so cold that he has no idea when yesterday ends and tomorrow began, so he just wakes up in the middle of his meeting. Rhaenyra then comes back to Dragonstone, fresh from her little field trip to see Alicent, and they basically explain the circumstances for Rook's Rest, like why it wasn't Rhaenyra and Rhaenys instead. She wants to be the one to take Cyrax immediately, but they won't let her because she's too important for the war effort, which is correct. Like, you don't let your captain go on an away mission like this. Jace wants to be the one to go. She's like, oh, hell no. But probably because she doesn't want him to die, but also because his heir, and if something were to happen to him, then it would be really bad. And it winds up being Rhaenys who demands that she send her instead because she has the largest dragon that's active at the moment. Vermithor is much, much bigger, but nobody's currently riding him, so he's an inactive dragon.
Oh, weird.
Then down in the Valyrian library, Rhaenyra tells Jace the prophecy of A Song on Ice and Fire, Aegon's prophecy, because he's her heir. We were all expecting this because there was a little bit of audio from this in the previous trailers. Basically, that there are White Walkers, the Long Night, the Night King, everything is coming, but they don't know when. So at any given moment, they could just march south of the wall, and that'd be the end of them, and that's why they need to unite the realm. This will probably inform a lot of what Jace does going forward on the show. And I've talked about this in a couple previous videos, but the dragon skull that they're standing in front of when this is happening is Meraxes, and that's meant to foreshadow Melee's death because of the events of Aegon's conquest, also because Meraxes was really critical during Aegon's conquest. So there's a lot of history going on in this shot here and a lot of foreshadowing for later in the episode. Notice how they cut together the shots of Aegon putting on Aegon the Conqueror's Valyrian armor and his crown, Aegon the Conqueror's crown, when they're doing this too. So there's a lot of Aegon the Conqueror stuff just in general happening in this moment. You do also clock that Aegon seems like he is super drunk when he hops on his dragon. Then we get the actual battle at Rook's Rest. Been waiting for actual dragon battles for so long now. You can clearly see how Staunton is vastly outmatched until Rhaenys and Meleys arrive, but that was part of the idea, is like they knew they would overpower them. They were just doing this because it was a trap. Rhaenys starts burning a giant the Green Army. Most of their army got killed, but enough were around to continue taking the actual castle after the dragons went down.